Welcome to the Lunatone video DALI Basics. Lunatone offers a wide range of products using the diverse possibilities of the DALI and DALI-2 standard. In this video, we are going to explain the basics of DALI, in particular the topics that are important to understand our products. The following topics will be covered: important DALI facts, DALI components, DALI supply, wiring, DALI commands, broadcast addresses and groups, scenes, DALI parameters, and DALI-2 control devices. We are going to discuss the application perspective, hence everything that's important to plan and realize a DALI project. In-depth DALI communication for software developers will not be covered. To start, let's have a look at the most important DALI facts. DALI requires 2 wires for communication. The cables can be placed together with the 230-volt power line, which makes it simple and inexpensive. DALI is a digital signal which has a few advantages. It eliminates the problems of the 1 to 10 volt technology, specifically the influence of the line length or voltage fluctuation on the DIMM level. Furthermore, the digital signal also allows a two-way communication. Not only can control commands be sent to devices, but information and status can be queried from the device as well. To enable device-specific communication, the devices on the DALI line can be addressed. The device address, DALI address, makes it possible to send commands to specific devices. 64 control gears can be addressed on one DALI line. The effective range of a DALI command is defined by the target address contained in the command. A distinction is made between individual address, group address, and broadcast. The DALI system supports up to 16 groups. Groups are used to control whole areas simultaneously. Each DALI device can be assigned to one or more groups. These groups can be adapted at any time without rewiring. Furthermore, the DALI system supports up to 16 scenes. A scene is a predefined light status for multiple luminaires and includes, for example, dimming states or color settings. Group and scene values are stored in the DALI devices. The devices know to which groups and scenes they belong and which values they have to adopt when they are recalled. Control commands are precisely defined in the DALI standard. The most important commands will be explained in detail later on. Above all, it is important to know that there are no priorities in DALI. The last command always wins. Let's also shortly mention the baud rate. A rate of 1200 is not extremely fast, but appropriate for lighting control. A DALI system always includes a DALI control gear, a control device, and a power supply. The DALI system always needs a DALI power supply, usually named DALI PS. To switch or dim the lights, a control device is used. These are typically sensors, input devices such as button modules or push-button couplers, but also gateways. All the way on the right, we see the DALI control gears. Nowadays, they are of course mainly DALI LED drivers, but can also be other ballasts such as fluorescent lamps, DALI relays, and also DALI phase dimmers. Depending on the country and industry, terms such as DALI ballast, electronic control gear, ECG, or the term DALI lights is used. This setup of devices applies to the DALI standard as well as the DALI-2 standard. In the DALI standard, control gears are divided into 9 different device types. For example, control gears for LEDs belong to device type 6, while fluorescent light ECGs are part of the device type 0. Most control gears have the same setting options. Only the tunable wide RGB and RGBW control gears have a few extra options. We will look at these parameters later on in the chapter DALI parameters. It is important to know that a control gear can only receive commands and respond to queries. For example, it can return the status of the current light level upon request, but it will never send anything to the DALI line by itself. A DALI system always needs a DALI power supply. Usually, this is a separate device named DALI PS. According to the DALI standard, it is also possible to integrate a DALI power supply in a control device. This is often seen in local sensors or DALI gateways. However, Lunatone supports a modular system. Therefore, with a few exceptions, the DALI power supply is usually a separate module. The DALI standard specifies that the bus voltage must be between 12 and 19 volts so that the DALI control gears are supplied with sufficient voltage. Usually, the DALI voltage is 16 volt. If you want to measure the DALI voltage with a multimeter, keep in mind that the DALI line is a communication bus. It's clocked and the DC voltage is influenced by the bus communication. Therefore, you should use a suitable device for clocked DC voltage. The maximum current allowed on the DALI bus is specified with 250 mA, and under no circumstances should this value be exceeded. There are different types of DALI PS with different power. It is important that the DALI power supply fits the power requirements of the installation. Let's have a look how this is determined. Each DALI control gear requires a DALI current of 2 mA for communication. If 64 DALI control gears are connected, a DALI supply of at least 128 mA is required. It is also possible that control gears or control devices are supplied with power only via the DALI bus. The power consumption of these devices can be higher than 2 mA. This must be taken into account when planning the installation. It is therefore important that the power of the DALI bus supply is greater than the sum of the consumers. When choosing the right DALI power supply, a certain reserve should be kept, about 20% of the guaranteed supply current. According to the DALI-2 specification, it is also possible to connect multiple DALI power supplies to one line. For this purpose, the terminals on the new DALI-2 power supplies are marked with plus and minus. In the DALI power supply datasheet, you will find two values that will show whether a device is suitable for this: the guaranteed supply current and the maximum supply current. The guaranteed supply current states the power the device offers, and the maximum supply current shows the maximum usage allowed. If the maximum supply current of a DALI power supply unit is 250 mA, it takes up the entire range permitted on a DALI system, and no further power supply is allowed. To summarize, the choice of a power supply depends on the number of DALI devices connected. Here are a few examples. In a small system with 4 control gears, 1 control unit, and 1 sensor, a small bus supply is sufficient, for example, with 30 mA. A medium-sized installation with 20 standard control gears, each requiring 2 mA, with 4 control gears with 6 mA each, 1 touch panel and 4 sensors, will require a bus power supply of 100 mA. In a large application with many control gears, sensors, and control devices, the DALI current can reach 200 mA. There are also applications where the maximum of 250 mA is almost exceeded, as shown here with 40 standard control gears, phase dimmers, and some other control devices reaching a total of 243 mA. This is not ideal and requires a special solution to extend the system. For these situations, Lunatone offers extensions, such as the DALI repeater, that divides the DALI bus physically and allows a power supply on each side. The DALI bus is a 2-wire line. The wires can be wired together with the 230-volt line, for example as a 5-wire line with phase 0, earth, and 2 times DALI, which makes it practical, efficient, and cost-effective. The wiring topology is the same as the network wiring. Lines looping through, star wiring, or tree structures are possible. Rings, meshes, or daisy chains are not allowed. The connection to the DALI terminals can be made regardless of polarity. The bus input is protected against overvoltage. Therefore, the terminals are usually not marked with plus or minus. An exception is the DALI-2 power supply. Because the DALI-2 standard allows several DALI PS on one DALI line, the terminals must be labeled with plus and minus. An important point to consider when wiring is the cable length. It is generally known that the maximum wiring length of DALI is 300 meters. Actually, the DALI standard does not specify the wiring length, but rather the maximum voltage drop of 2 volt from the bus supply to the last participant. With a wire cross-section of 1.5 square millimeters and a certain tolerance, this results in the known 300 meters. If a thinner wire cross-section is used, the wiring length is reduced accordingly. Please note that in addition to the wire cross-section, the losses at the terminals also have an influence on the voltage drop. In this example, the DALI power supply is placed in the middle of a star-wired system. This allows 300 meters in any direction, achieving a wiring length of 600 meters, while the DALI specifications are still met. And this is not only possible in one direction, but star-shaped in all directions. Now that we have discussed wiring and the DALI power supply, let's have a look at the DALI communication next. To control a luminaire, not that many functions are needed. In the majority of cases, only switch on and off, setting of specific light values, dimming, and the recall of scenes are used. This means, with the functions listed here, most applications can be realized. The light level, also known as DAP, direct arc power, allows the recall of specific light levels. There are 256 steps available in a range from 0.1% to 100%. It is important to know that this command uses fading and allows a soft change between values. The light level 0% is considered as off, which is similar to sending an off command, except that this one includes fading. Please note that not all control gears can dim down to 0.1%. When sending the command recall max, the light is switched on immediately to the maximum value, and the command recall min switches the light to the minimum value. Neither of them uses fading. The command off turns the light off immediately. When sending go to last active level, the control gears go to the value they used to have before they were switched off. The last active value is saved in the control gear itself before switching off, so the value can be different for each control gear. Please note that not all DALI control gears support this function, while DALI-2 control gears have to support it. When sending the command up, the light is dimmed up, increasing the brightness, and the command down dims the light down. The up or down command is often sent several times until the desired brightness is reached. A typical application is a dimming button. As long as the button is pressed, the command is sent. The speed for dimming, up or down, can be set with the parameter fade rate in the settings panel of the control gears. We will talk more about this parameter later on. The command go to scene recalls the values programmed for the scene. When sending color temperature TC step cooler, the control gears increases the cooler temperature value by 1 step towards cooler light. The command color temperature TC step warmer, on the other hand, decreases the value for warmer light. These commands can only be processed by DALI DTA-TC control gears. The color temperature steps are very small. In order to adjust the color temperature manually with a button, like you would with brightness, you would have to press for a long time. The DALI standard does not provide any options to set the step size or speed. To solve this, Lunatone offers a special command, DT8 cooler ×3, to speed up the process. In addition, Lunatone made the step size adjustable for Lunatone tunable white control gears. Please also note that the commands step warmer and cooler only changes the color temperature. The brightness stays the same. Furthermore, control gears react to these commands when they are turned off as well, so when they are switched on, they resume the correct color temperature right away. To summarize the chapter DALI commands, it is good to know that there is no generic on command in the DALI standard. The light is always switched on to a specific value. Furthermore, DALI offers the possibility of gently switching the light on and off with DAP light level commands, which include a fade time. And last, there are no priorities in DALI. The last send command always wins. The effective range of a DALI command is defined by the target address contained in the command. Let's have a look at the possibilities. Commands can be broadcasted to the entire DALI bus and all the connected control gears will respond. When commands are sent to a DALI group, only the control gears that belong to this group will react. If a command is directed to a specific DALI address, only the control gear with this specific DALI address will react. If you observe the commands sent on the DALI bus, for example with the Lunatone DALI monitor, which is part of the DALI cockpit software, you can recognize to whom a command is sent by looking at the address. However, retrieving information of who sent the command is not possible. Please note that a control gear will always react the same, whether the command is sent broadcast, to a group, or to an address. If a command is broadcasted, all devices connected to the DALI line will receive the command and react to it. However, some commands are device type specific, like the tunable wide commands warmer and cooler. So only DALI device type 8TC devices will be able to react, even if these commands are sent broadcast. Broadcast commands are very useful for quick installations. For example, in an open plan office space with one control unit, one motion sensor and multiple luminaires that behave the same way, the DALI commands can be broadcasted. Also, the factory settings of the control unit could be sufficient for such an installation. To conclude, for basic installations, neither addressing nor an adjustment of settings with a software tool are necessary. Lunatone offers several pre-programmed control units for such installations. Furthermore, DALI broadcast commands can be used to set DALI parameters for all the connected control gears. For example, the power on level and the fade time can be set like that, but more about this later on. If for an application, broadcast control is not sufficient and access to individual control gears is required, the devices can be addressed. As already mentioned, 64 DALI short addresses can be assigned to DALI control gears on the DALI line. More precisely, address 0 to 63. When new DALI control gears are delivered, the DALI standard requires that they do not have a DALI address. Until they are addressed, they will only react to broadcast commands. Each address should only be used once. 2 or more control gears having the same address will cause communication issues. For example, if a control unit requests a status, 2 devices will react and respond at the same time. That will cause a collision. The controller will not understand the response and instead report a communication error. Communication issues are visible in the DALI cockpit. Double addressing can be solved by sending the command delete address X and then starting a system extension. For example, with the addressing wizard in the DALI cockpit software. Most control devices do not have a DALI short address because it was not specified in the original DALI standard. Sometimes it was necessary to assign standard devices a DALI address so that they could be recognized by other DALI control components or gateways and controlled or read out. This has been solved with the DALI-2 standard, where control devices have now their own address space. Let's take a look at the addressing process. Installation softwares, such as the Lunatone DALI cockpit, offer simple addressing wizards. The DALI standard specifies that random addressing has to be used. This means that there is absolutely no logic, neither the distance between the control gears, proximity to the interface, nor the control gears being in the same unit has an influence on the address. There are typically 2 addressing methods to choose from. Number 1, the new installation. This is recommended, as the name suggests, for new installation. All devices will receive a new address. If there are any previously addressed devices in the system, they will also get a new address. Hence, this method can be used to re-address all luminaires at once. This is especially helpful if pre-addressed control gears have been added to a system, causing double address communication errors. Method number 2 is the system extension. To start, all available addresses in the system are searched and listed. In the following step, unaddressed control gears are searched and assigned an address. After each DALI device has received an address, It is important to locate the address within a building or room. This is usually done by selecting the control gear address with a software tool, switching it on and off, while checking which luminaire in the room reacts. When using the DALI cockpit software, please activate the checkbox Localize first. If this checkbox is activated and you click on the control gear address in the component tree, the selected luminaire will light up to 100%. All other luminaires will be dimmed to a minimum level. This will make it easier to spot the luminaire in the room. As soon as you have identified the luminaire, you can enter a name for it in the component tree, for example, Spot 1, or write down the address in your building plan. This step is repeated until all addresses have been localized. Please note that the assigned names are only visible in the DALI cockpit software on the PC you used for naming. The name is not saved in the device itself. If you want to share the names, you have to save the project file on your PC and share that file. The DALI cockpit software also supports a second method of localization to speed up the process for bigger installations. This method uses the smartphone application DALI Finder. We will explain this method in a follow-up video. In most installations, it is desirable to control a selected set of devices simultaneously. To realize this, DALI offers 16 groups. Luminaires can be assigned to these groups and then switched or dimmed together. In many cases, luminaires are grouped together based on their spatial location and if they should react together. Defining which luminaire belongs to which group is done with the DALI cockpit software in the settings panel of the control gear. The information will be saved in the control gear itself and it will react whenever the group is recalled. A luminaire can be assigned to one group, but also multiple groups. It is also possible to create overlapping groups or even groups within groups. For example, in an open plan office with different groups for each area, you could add an additional group that keeps the window luminaires at a low dim level after work hours till midnight. Especially in applications with overlapping groups, you should keep in mind that DALI has no priorities and that the last command always wins. Upon delivery, there are no groups assigned to the control gears. Therefore, they will not respond to any commands sent to groups. A scene is used to create a specific light ambience. A well-designed scene usually includes different light values for the luminaires in the room. For example, some lights will be dimmed, some will be colored, some will be off. With a scene command, this ambience can be recalled with a single command that simultaneously sets all luminaires to these predefined values. The scene values are saved in the control gears, therefore, when a scene is recalled, the luminaire itself knows which state it has to assume. With DALI, up to 16 scenes can be defined. Let's have a look at the different settings that are possible for scenes. For each luminaire, the light level, aka brightness or direct arc power DAP, can be set. The light level is set in percent, from 100%, which is full on, to 0%, which is off. For tunable white control gears, the light level as well as the color temperature can be set. For color RGB and RGBW control gears, the light level as well as different colors can be set. If a control gear should not react to a scene command, it can be set to mask. The control gear will then ignore the scene command and retain its current value. The scene values can be set with the DALI cockpit software. For example, light level 100% and 6000 Kelvin for color temperature, or you enter only one value and leave the other one on mask. For example, light level mask and color temperature 2700 Kelvin. If this scene is recalled, the luminaire will go to 2700 Kelvin while remaining on its current light level. Please note that there is a maximum of 16 scenes, regardless of light level, color, or color temperature. The factory settings of most control gears for scenes is mask. Therefore, they do not react to scene commands. Lunatone control gears are special in this regard. They have predefined scenes, especially RGB and RGBW devices. Right out of the box, 16 colors can be recalled with scenes, covering the entire color spectrum. Let's have a look at the DALI installation. As an example, we will discuss this meeting room with central ceiling lights surrounded by smaller spots. To keep it simple, we will neglect the control units. First, the devices have to be wired. Usually, the DALI wires are placed together with the 230-volt cables. Here, the 230-volt cables are not shown, just to keep it simple. The wiring can be freely chosen. There is absolutely no reason to make adjustments for addresses or groups, because they are not related to the wiring anyways. Only the specifications of maximum wire length and wire cross-section have to be followed. Usually the wire length is 300 meters at a wire cross-section of 1.5 square millimeters. Please check the beginning of the video for more information. Once everything is wired and ideally the functionality of the lights has been tested, the devices can be addressed with the DALI cockpit software. During the addressing process, each luminaire will receive an address at random. Next, the lights can be assigned to groups based on which luminaires should be controlled together. Here, the middle lights are assigned to group 1, 2, and 3. The spots on the sides are in group 4, and the spots in the front and back are group 5. Additionally, all center luminaires are assigned to group 6 and the wall lights to group 7. Using a control unit, we can now control 7 groups. After setting up the groups, we can now proceed with creating scenes. For scene 1, all luminaires are set to a light level of 100%. In scene 2, only the middle lights, our group 6, is at 100%. The surrounding spots, our group 7, is switched off. Scene 3 sets the middle ones to 30%, the surrounding spots to 80%. Scenes can be created as desired and do not have to follow the DALI groups, as you can see here in scene 4. 2 rows that we did not define as groups are turned off, 6 spots are set to light level 30, and the remaining to 100%. Scene 5 is designed for a presentation setting, where the luminaires are gradually getting brighter towards the rear. DALI is very flexible. If these light settings need adjustment, it can be easily done with software. No structural changes will be necessary, and definitely no rewiring. The groups and scenes can be easily reprogrammed to fit new requirements. We will now take a closer look at standard DALI parameters that can be set with software tools. Device type, serial number, groups, scenes, minimum dim level, actual dim level, maximum dim level, power on level, system failure level, fade time, and fade rate are the parameters for control gear specified in the DALI standard and have to be visible in the software tool. Some manufacturers provide additional information, such as brand or device description, but that's up to the manufacturer. Let's have a look at these parameters in the Lunatone cockpit software. On top, we see the general information, such as serial number and device type. The device type is an information about the device. This information is provided by the manufacturer and cannot be changed. Please remember the 8 device types we discussed in the beginning. Also, the serial number is provided by the manufacturer. Below there is a list of all groups, 0 to 15. The device is assigned to all those groups that are highlighted in blue. Next is a list of all the scenes from 0 to 15. Per scene, you can set what light level this device should assume when recalled. Just tick the box and enter a light level between 0 and 100%. If the device should not react to a scene, then it has to be unchecked to use mask. All the way on the bottom are different DALI parameters for levels and fading. These parameters apply to all device types. First, let's have a look at the minimum dim level. The minimum dim level is used to define the lowest level a luminaire can be dimmed to. It is very useful if different types of control gears are used within the same installation. When using different devices, it could happen that the brightness of the luminaires at their lowest level are not all the same. To bring them to a uniform appearance, the minimum dim level can be adjusted with the DALI cockpit software. Another useful application for the minimum dim level is to ensure that the light is never below a certain light level. This setting option is important for some phase dimmers which flicker at low dimming values. With the minimum dim level, entering this low light level range can be prevented. Just like a minimum dim level, there is also a maximum dim level. This parameter is mostly used to either limit the maximum light intensity in general, because there is too much light, or to reduce the light intensity of individual luminaires, because they are too bright in relation to other luminaires. The power on level is the value that the control gear should have when the power is switched on. The DALI standard requires a factory setting of 100% full on for the power on level. This makes it easy to verify that the lights are wired correctly during installation. However, depending on the application, other dim values can be useful, even 0%. For example, after a power outage in a school during the holidays, it would not be ideal if all lights were switched to 100%. On the other hand, setting the power on level to 0% could also cause security issues at night or in dark rooms. So it could be worth a consideration setting a few individual lights to 20%. The power on level can also be set to mask, which means that the luminary turns to its value before the power was switched off. This is the most common setting for this parameter. In contrast to the power on level, the system failure level is the value that the luminaires assume as soon as the DALI voltage is switched off. DALI system failures are, for example, a short circuit on the DALI line, a defect of the DALI power supply, or a disconnected DALI cable. The control gears monitor the DALI voltage, and in the event of a DALI system failure, the luminaires switch to the defined light level. The system failure level can also be set to mask, which means that the luminaires retain their current value. This is probably appropriate for most applications. The fade time describes the transition speed from one light level to another. The fade time can either be set to 0, meaning fading is deactivated, or any duration from 0.7 to 90 seconds. For DALI-2 devices, the fade time can be extended to range from 0.1 seconds to 16 minutes. The backwards compatibility is ensured. The fade time affects the light level commands, aka DAP commands, and the scene commands. Commands like off, max, min, etc. are not affected. Please note that per device only one fade time can be set. It will affect all light level commands and scene commands sent to that device. So if different fade times are required, they can be set when configuring the control device for each DALI light level command. With the fade rate, the speed for dimming up or down can be set. Possible values are 2.8 steps per second to 358 steps per second. The standard DALI value is 44.7 steps per second, which will allow you to dim from 0.1% to 100% in about 5 seconds. You can calculate this as following. The range for the light level is 0.1 to 100%. In DALI, this range is actually set with 1 to 254 steps. So if the standard setting of 44.7 is active and you press the up button for 1 second, the value will increase by 44.7 steps. So you will have to press for approximately 5 seconds to reach 254, aka 100%. If you want to dim faster, just increase the step size per second. However, keep in mind that very large step sizes are difficult to control with some control devices. If you want to dim slower, a value of 25 steps per second might be the best. We will also quickly show a DALI DT8 device because there are an exemption with a few additional setting options. This example shows the settings of a DALI DT8 TC tunable white device. Color temperature values can be set for scenes. Color temperature limits can be set, and furthermore, it is possible to define the color temperature for power on and system failure. Roughly spoken, control devices are devices that communicate with control gear, like sensors, switches, etc. The original DALI standard specified commands and setting options for control gear. However, the communication between control gear and control devices, and the communication amongst control devices, was not specified. Now, with the DALI-2 standard, the control devices have been specified in more detail. There are a few terms you should know when using DALI-2 control devices. We distinguish two categories of control devices: application controllers and input devices. To put it simply, application controllers are all those control devices that send control commands to control gear. For example, a sensor that independently sends commands like on, recall min, light levels, etc. to connected luminaires. Configurable control devices, such as push-button couplers, gateways, and central PLC units, also have an application controller implemented. Within the application controllers, we distinguish further between single master application controllers and multi-master application controllers. Let's have a look at a single master application controller using a DALI broadcast sensor as an example. When using a single master, the DALI bus is controlled by a single control device. A single master application controller has no collision detection or bus monitor implemented. It cannot recognize if other control devices are sending. So if a single master and another control device are placed on the same DALI line and send commands at the same time, the commands will collide and will not be legible for the system. Therefore, it is not possible to add further control devices in a system with a single master application controller. Also, DALI-2 input devices that communicate in instance mode and send automatic event messages cannot be used on the same DALI line. We will talk about the instance mode later on in detail. What can be added are, for example, input devices or basic sensors that only send information upon request through polling or query commands. Typical examples for single master application controllers are DALI broadcast sensors, as shown here, DALI broadcast rotary dimmers, except the one from Lunatone, and most KNX DALI gateways. Again, the Lunatone KNX gateway is an exception. Next to the single master, there is also a multi-master application controller. When using multi-master, several control devices can be active simultaneously, controlling the luminaires on the same DALI line. The controllers have a collision detection to monitor the DALI line and only send when it is free. In general, multi-master control is not something new. This control system already existed before DALI-2. Typical examples of multi-master application controllers are most of the configurable control devices, push-button couplers, and sensors from manufacturers like Lunatone, Tridonic, or Halvar, as well as gateways from providers such as Vago or Beckhoff. Another important DALI-2 term is instance mode. The instance mode allows devices to instantly send information as event messages to the DALI line. An application controller receives these messages and then controls the luminaires accordingly. A device in instance mode cannot control anything directly. It only sends information. For example, a motion sensor in instance mode sends event messages whenever motion is detected, and an input device sends event messages when keys are pressed. The event messages are precisely defined in the DALI-2 specification for occupancy sensors and light sensors, push buttons, and input devices. Part of this definition is how an event message should look like, how the instance mode is activated and deactivated, and which setting options should be available. The setting options include, for example, which inputs should be sent as event messages, as well as options for repetition speed. DALI-2 also allows a control device to have an application controller and use the instance mode as well. This is especially important to know for Lunatone control devices, which always include both options. With this combination, devices can control luminaires directly, but also send event messages to central controllers, which process the information and then, for example, switch on the air conditioning. The Lunatone DALI-2 components all have an application controller implemented and support the instance mode as well, to send event messages to other application controllers. With the DALI-2 standard, the addressing of control devices has been defined as well. Control devices have been given their own range of addresses. There are even separate address spaces for different types, such as input devices or sensors. This ensures that there are enough addresses available and that they are independent from the luminaire addresses. The addressing principle is also random, just like the control gear addressing. To localize the addresses, DALI-2 control devices can signal their location with blinking, buzzing, beeping, or similar. Let's summarize what we learned about DALI-2 control devices. First, not all devices with a DALI-2 logo can be used together. For example, a DALI-2 sensor with single master application controller cannot be added to a system that already has an application controller. Second, DALI-2 input devices or sensors with instance mode are very well defined in the DALI-2 standard. They can be easily integrated in DALI-2 compatible central control systems. And last, the configuration of the application controllers is not defined in the DALI-2 standard. Therefore, the software configuration tool of the manufacturer is always required for setup. This applies to both DALI control devices as well as interfaces to KNX, Ethernet, and so on. This brings us to the end of the DALI Basics video. We hope that this information helps you successfully plan your DALI installation. Thank you very much for your attention.